The following story is based on true events detailing the horse riots of June 3rd, 2021. This is not an overdramatic telling of the horrific events. Reader discretion is advised. Chapter 1: The Horse Slayer. On a bright, sunny day, Hobo Joe was strolling through the grass plains. He was very ecstatic because his good old pal Random gifted him a spyglass. Hobo Joe could not wait to use it. On his way to set up camp, Hobo Joe walked past another campsite that was safeguarded with fences all around and reeked of poop. As he walked by, covering his nose and trying not to vomit, Hobo Joe heard intense screams. It sounded like horses. As he was about to enter to investigate, he was stopped by a gentleman named Georgie. "Get off my lawn!" Georgie screamed, holding Diamond's sword in hand. Hobo Joe ran in fear as he did not want to die by the crazy man. While setting up the tent on a hill nearby, Hobo Joe continued to hear horses scream. Hobo Joe decided to use his spyglass to investigate from afar. What Hobo Joe seen was unimaginable, disgusting, and appalling. Hobo Joe drops his spyglass and starts to uncontrollably vomit. Hobo Joe gathers himself, picks up the spyglass, wipes the lens, and observes once more. "I can't believe it," he says. Hobo Joe witnesses with his own eyes Georgie and Mr. Golf slaying horses and putting horse meat on a campfire. Mr. Golf starts walking to a baby horse while Georgie laughs like a madman. "I can't watch anymore," Hobo Joe says as he put down the spyglass. "I must put a stop to this madness. This can't happen in Random's town." As the sun sets, Hobo Joe must rest, for tomorrow is when action will be taken. Chapter 2: The Protest. The next morning, Hobo Joe spreads word of the crimes committed by Mr. Golf and Georgie. Disgust, fear, then outrage. That's what is felt by every person Hobo Joe spreads the news to. Hobo Joe lets the entire town know that he will be starting a protest outside Georgie's campsite where the massacre is taking place. The next day, sunrise, Hobo Joe walks up to the campsite with his picket fence sign reading, "Yo ho, horse slayer, you gotta go." But he's alone. Hobo Joe is fearing the worst. What if no one shows up? He thinks to himself. As Hobo Joe begins to panic, Georgie walks out of his tent, horse meat in hand. "I'm gonna kill you, Hobo Joe," yells Georgie. As Georgie starts walking up, both Hobo Joe and Georgie hear a chant in the distance. They both stare off towards a hill. The chant gets louder and louder. Hobo Joe starts to see a mob of people walking over the hill, and a huge smile blooms off of his face. Hobo Joe bursts into tears. "Yes! The people have arrived!" Hobo Joe shouts. In glee, the crowd of protesters' chant becomes more clear as they get closer. "Georgie is unfair! Georgie is in there, standing at the concession, plotting his oppression." The protesters chanted repeatedly. Georgie runs inside, looking worried and quickly stashing his horse meat in his pocket. The crowd was massive. Even Random was there. "Thanks for bringing this monster to our attention. You are our hero, Hobo Joe," Random says to Hobo Joe. Hobo Joe looks at the signs, all beautiful and creative. "Horse Slayer," said one sign. "PETA for the win," said another. Although the town showed up and everything seemed to be going as planned, the battle was far from over. Chapter 3. Not as planned. It is day 3 of the protest, which has now turned into a hunger strike. But spirits are still high and hope is still alive to bring Georgie to justice. Georgie has barricaded himself inside his camp, and Mr. Golf is nowhere to be found. However, everyone's focus is on Georgie. "That monster can't keep himself locked in there forever," says Gary, the town snail. "He is probably feasting on all the horses he's been killing throughout the years," says Hobo Joe. As night sets, hunger is on everyone's mind. It is very visible. People are losing faith. Hobo Joe thinks to himself, "I must do something." Hobo Joe stands in front of the crowd. "People want random..." Hobo Joe stands in front of the crowd. "People of RandomCraft, we cannot..." Loud noises in the distance interrupts his speech. Everyone curiously looks to the hillside. The noises get louder. Figures start popping up over the hill. "Look, more protesters!" Gary the snail shouts. The noises become louder, and the figures start sprinting towards the protesters. The noise becomes clear, and the zombie shrieks become louder. "Run! Get to safety!" shouts Random, as everyone panics and runs away from the zombie horde. What was once a peaceful protest became a chaotic war zone, and the only thing on Hobo Joe's mind was to get to safety. Hobo Joe starts sprinting up to his tent, but tumbles upon Gary the snail. On the ground, getting zombified. "Save yourself!" screams Gary the snail. Hobo Joe runs, never turning back. Chapter 4. Hypocrite. Upon arriving at his tent, Hobo Joe is relieved to be alive. However, something doesn't seem right. The air, the smell of it is off. "I smelt this before," Hobo Joe thinks to himself. "Yes, it smells like poop." Before Hobo Joe can react, Mr. Golf jumps on his back and starts screaming. Hobo Joe, being weak from the traumatic zombie horde, cannot overcome the strength and stank from Mr. Golf. Hobo Joe is pinned down by Mr. Golf. "Why, Mr. Golf? Why kill all those horses?" screams Hobo Joe. "A Golf gotta eat," said Mr. Golf. "And now you're gonna eat." Mr. Golf pulls out a horse steak and a camera. "Now you're gonna eat this horse right here, or I'ma eat you." Hobo Joe cries and starts pleading with Mr. Golf. "Please, I have a family upstate. I beg you, I'm just a simple hobo." Mr. Golf laughs. "You think those fine folk at the protest had families? I still brought that zombie horde to y'all." After realizing who brought the zombie horde, Hobo Joe explodes in rage. "Now eat this horse or meat or I will..." Hobo Joe throws Mr. Golf off and lunges at him in rage and anger. Hobo Joe screams, "You monster!" as he throws multiple punches at Mr. Golf. Mr. Golf overcomes Hobo Joe's anger and once more pins him down. "Now you have one final chance, boy. Eat this horse meat or I'll eat you." Hobo Joe seems no other option. Mr. Golf grabs his camera. Hobo Joe reaches for the horse meat, quickly devouring it while in tears. Drops from his eyes. "I'll see you soon, boy," says Mr. Golf as he disappears into the night sky. Chapter 5. Judge, Jury, Executioner. The sun rises. Hobo Joe wakes up to shouting outside his tent. He is in fear and very beaten up from last night's events. Hobo Joe also feels very ill from a full stomach of horse meat. Hobo Joe walks outside, only to realize the town had turned against him. People were everywhere, shouting, "Hypocrite!" and "Horse Slayer!" and "Monster! Eating, loser, man, baby!" Hobo Joe couldn't believe it. unexpected. Standing in the crowd was the two true horse-eating monsters, Mr. Golf and Georgie, both of them joining in the crowd's chants. Hobo Joe thought to himself, how could these two overnight turn my entire protest against me? Hobo Joe pleaded with the crowd, I'm innocent! They are the monsters! But the chants became louder. We've seen the video, said one protester. Hobo Joe looked into the crowd for his only hope, Random, but was never seen again, believed to be devoured by the zombie horde. The chants became more aggressive. Hobo Joe started hearing people scream, execute him! And kill him! Before he knew it, Hobo Joe was grabbed by the crowd and was carried away. He screamed, pleaded, and begged, but nothing worked. Hobo Joe was thrown in a cage, built the same day, and watched as a tower next to him was being constructed. Hobo Joe screamed at Mr. Golf, who was outside the cage, I demand a trial! Mr. Golf replied, I am the judge, jury, and executioner. Hobo Joe looked up and watched as Georgie was above him with an anvil. Doink! Hobo Joe was no more. Georgie and Mr. Golf had successfully turned a peaceful protest into a violent, bloodthirsty mob. It is said that the two of them run the town now and have an underground black market where they continue to torture, kill, and eat horses, but that is yet to be proven. However, what is known is that if you ever stand between them and their horses, you will not survive in their town. Epilogue. Rain, wetness, cold. Hobo Joe wakes up in a blown-up hole where he started his journey. I have been reborn, Hobo Joe thought to himself. In Glee, Mr. Golf pulls out a horse steak and a camera. Now you're gonna eat this horse right here, or I'ma eat you. Hobo Joe cries and starts pleading with Mr. Golf. Get out of here. No.